everyone. I made a video listening back. I think it's probably a bit too confusing, so I'm going to do a simpler version. Just many perspective helps anyway. I keep going on about this damn box. What is he talking about being inside a box? So here's a box. Imagine, so here's, oh, this might not let me do it, but here's you and me. And I'll put an arrow that's going in there. So look out your window if you've got a window right now, and imagine that it was possible that the entire universe as we know it is actually inside a giant box like this. But Mark, if we were inside a box, we would see the edge of the box. Well, actually, no. So, um, it, rather than a box, there's what's called inflation theory of the universe, that the universe is like a balloon that's expanding at the speed of light. The thing is, in science, how do you see something? The word see, well, you bounce light off of it and it has to come back into your eye, right? That's how you see it. We could expand that out to say any type of information, so it could be electromagnetic or other information. But it all amounts to the same thing, which is we're limited to bouncing things off at the speed of light. Well, to see the edge of the universe, it would take light. If we started now, if we pointed something at the edge, what we believe is the edge of the universe, we would you wouldn't be. It would take forever for that light to bounce off the edge and come back to realize that it actually had. So when we say we think the universe is infinite, that's because it's not possible for us to actually test that. We can't actually falsify that, as it's known in science, because we can't fire, say, a photon or electromagnetic wave at the edge of the universe and have it hit it and come back. We can't do that, because even at the speed of light, it would potentially take forever. For example, we say, well, how many galaxies and how many stars there are? Those are just the ones whose light has actually reached us. There may be, we don't know how many more, because that light hasn't reached us and would take, maybe another billion years to reach us. There's no way of knowing. So it is theoretically possible, more likely a sphere, but with the idea of my box, that the universe could have an edge and be contained in a box. Okay, in a sense it really does, but I don't want to get into that right now. Okay, so what? The what is, if we could see that it really did, let's say it really did have an edge like this, then the next question would be, well, what, this isn't what science currently says, but I'm just going with my idea of the box. Well, what's outside of the box, right? I mean, if you could find an edge to the universe, then the next obvious question is, well, let's push through it. What's the other side of that? What do you mean there's an edge to it? Well, it's a point at which, the point of my box, and actually it's true, it's not provable by science at this point, but that this is the best current theory, is the same would be actually true, which is, say, for example, if we could make a photon or light reach the edge of the universe. So I mean, in the idea of the Big Bang. So I guess I should have explained this science first. So the idea is that the universe expanded out in all directions. It's three-dimensional, like blowing up a balloon from a tiny point. And in theory, there is then an edge, and this edge is moving out at the speed of light, represented as c. So in theory, there is also an edge, and then the same question comes up: what do you mean there's an edge? Okay, well, what we mean is that the laws of physics, as we understand them, and therefore all science and what we could call, which is based on the idea of cause and effect and observation and repeatable observation, falsifiable observation, laws of quantum physics, so if we go all the way with that, the quantum fields only exist to the point of this balloon that is blowing up at the speed of light. There's no there's no quantum fields as we understand it or anything, what's outside it then? What's outside of this? There isn't, there's nothing, or there's nothing outside of it. Is it so? I mean, this is often the problem. I mean, this is why I say it's helpful if people have studied advanced, like science and stuff, because it, it does provide us ways to think about these things. So the box represents the observable, repeatable, observable, falsifiable laws of the domain, and outside of it it's lawlessness, it is nothingness, it is, so what I'm saying is that it is not, that what is outside of the box is you, essentially. I don't mean this literally, but all of us. But instead of a person, I said it's this symphonic, which I put as an S, which is it's beyond our comprehension, but it's essentially you could for now we'll say vibration, or I say symphonic, as in music and light and types of vibration. But it's not spatially. This is where it's difficult. It's not spatially outside. You cannot, if you could reach the edge of the universe, you cannot physically push through the edge of the universe. It is dimensionally outside. And this is why I try to avoid talking about it, because this is where it gets difficult, because it's our biological brain struggles with this. We feel like our brain is telling us, well, if we could reach the edge of the universe, surely we could push through it. No, because it's the same thing of why I said about the TV set, right? If this is a TV set, I'll put an old-fashioned antenna on it. If you were on the screen, as I said, if you were information that was on the screen of the TV set, how would you push outside of that TV set? You can't. You're on that screen. You only exist on that screen. Your perception, what does that mean? Your ability to perceive what you are only exists within here. And it's the same with this. There is nothing here. Even within this, it's just like I said about the TV screen, is phosphorus that has the potential for information, which is rendered through an electron beam coming across it. The potential here are the quantum fields within this, but where does the information come from? It's coming from outside, but not outside physically. There is no physical outside. It's coming from another dimension, dimensionally. And this is where I said it ties to string theory. So string theory is a mathematical proof. It's not observable or testable or falsifiable at this point. I believe it will be eventually, and prove, I know this is the case, but whether it can be proved, but I think it will be. That says the same thing, that this domain is both contained within other domain and also at the smallest level. So if we go down to point particles, they also contain smaller dimensions. What do we mean by dimensions? And this is where our biological computer and intellect are not capable of comprehending. You need symphonic perception. Okay. We can use the word, as I say, well, we can use words, but words have to find meaning through comprehension, and comprehension is part of the symphonic self outside. There is no comprehension within intellect. There's information processing, there is pattern recognition and information processing. Again, I will have to break these out into separate videos to really explain them, but just for now. So, for example, if I've never done math and I have to learn that 1 + 1 = 2, the learning process of that is comprehension and is contained within the symphonic self, just as feeling and perception, so sensory perception, is all within the symphonic self. But once I know 1 + 1 = 2 and I've learned it, then that is information, and that is then within the intellect, within the domain. It has been, that information has been rendered, you could say, some people say quantum, well, quantum manifested is incorrect. It's not quantum manifested, it's symphonically manifested into the domain. So quantum manifesting people refer to is because information in the domain is a quantum level, but it's not actually quantum manifested. It's not the symphonic domain does not work through quantum physics. The quantum physics only exists within this domain. Outside of this domain, it's way beyond our comprehension, and it's not quantum physics. However, there, as I perceive it, there is a bridge, a bridge between the symphonic self and the intellectual domain here, the experience intellectual domain, which is quantum entangled. So essentially, you inside the box, your intellect is what's inside the box. This biological computer is quantum entangled with essentially intellect. So let me draw this here. I'm thinking this is probably way beyond what I probably need to really go much slower through this. I apologize. It's only when I start talking about it, because to me, I've spent my whole life thinking this, and I realize there's just, it's sort of like if you've done, it's a very advanced math or something, and you've done, I don't know, well, it's not very advanced, but most people know about calculus. Let's say you've done trigonometric integrals, and then you're talking to someone that's only done arithmetic. If you're used to doing that math, you forget what's involved in going from arithmetic all the way to learning trigonometric integrals. And it's the same problem for me, is that I start talking about this and I realize probably there's so much information that I need to go through. But let's just complete this discussion. The intellect, which is essentially your biological computer, I just have to put biological, BC for biological computer, your brain that you perceive, is quantum entangled with essentially you can think of, like, instead of a biological computer, there's an informational intellect that is here, that is quantum entangled, but that is then connected to your symphonic self, and your symphonic self is where the actual comprehension. Now, how that connection is made is beyond my comprehension, it's beyond my perception. It's probably, once our science evolves another 100,000 years, we might be able to take a guess at how that's happening. I have no clue. But it's not. So the idea of quantum physics and quantum manifestation is essentially only within this domain. It's not outside. Okay. The rules of the symphonic domain are totally different and totally beyond our comprehension. And as I've said before, once this domain is trying to evolve to be what is in the symphonic domain, as it's if you like, the overall domain universe's purpose is to become what it is out here. To really, the observer, the entire universe is observing its own evolution. You could think of, if you want to call that God, God is basically watching itself evolve to how it became God, as I've said. And this universe eventually will become God. And at that point, it will be possible to answer that question, but it won't be possible, just as I've talked about these perceptual paradoxes, until we reach that point. Just as a child of 5 cannot understand what it's like to be an adult until it goes through the experiences to become the adult. And that is really what's happening here. And so it's pointless to ask that question. But yeah. But this separation between intellect and symphonic self is it goes through this foggy veil. It's very tricky. Another example of this is, so sometimes it can go either way. So the biological computer intellect can try to learn and create information, but sometimes the symphonic self can direct information. So we perceive in this domain, in intellect, that we are learning or we are creating. So I think the example of music, of a very original composition like Mozart or Bohemian Rhapsody, but you can't actually, air quotes, think and use intellect your way to that, because those compositions are not informational. They are not what I call templated informational. You're not just changing some chords or changing a melody that someone else has done, which would be intellectual, informational. You could do that. They are completely original, creative, and unique. The example I often give is from math. Actually, in the 1600s, Sir Isaac Newton created new types. So created, so that means it's coming from the symphonic domain. Created that math called calculus. He created calculus. But at exactly the same moment in time, another mathematician in Europe, Austria, I believe, called Leibniz, also created calculus. And then people argued about whether one had plagiarized the other, but they didn't. They both simply had their symphonic selves essentially downloaded it to them. So we perceive with creativity that we are, air quotes, doing it here inside the box, but true creativity, like something completely original, is information manifested into the domain. Or if you want to take the internet, you're essentially downloading it from your symphonic self in that moment. We've all experienced this, and this is the same thing as like when you wake up, you've been struggling with something, solve something, and you wake up and you have the answer. In brain sciences we say, the overnight, the neural net was changed, blah, blah, but it's nonsense. Like, and I've studied all this stuff. That is not believable in any way. I mean, if people, so this is an example by AI, which, I've studied all these things, is ask anyone working in AI, challenge them to explain how AIs are going to be creative, because how does creativity work? And they won't be able to answer you, because the only type of creativity an AI could do is informational or templated creativity, where it's rearranging the information it has. It will not be able to have symphonic creativity. It will never be able to create, a new type of music or anything completely original, because you cannot see that within the domain. That kind of creativity does not exist. Even if you observe neural connections in the brain, or if we could observe what I call the quantum computer, the intellectual computer, we wouldn't be able to observe that either. Okay, well, that's getting into more issues that I probably shouldn't have gone into here. Is my TV screen. Just because information appears on the TV screen doesn't mean it came from the TV screen, which is what our intellect is always telling us. Oftentimes they say it's coming from this transmission from your symphonic self from the outside. That's why I think AI is eventually in the future it won't let most people see outside the box, but they will perceive this chasm, intellectual chasm, that the limit of what's possible. I think AI is very important because it will be a way to show a lot of these things that I'm saying. Electronic AI I'm talking about. Electronic AI will not be able to feel, it will not be able to comprehend. And comprehension is a type of symphonic perception. It will just be able to process information eventually it will be able to process information very similar to how our brain does, using what we call quantum computing. By luck, it's been discovered it probably will be able to do that, but it will never be able to be, for example, truly creative, because that creation itself is the ultimate symphonic download. But then you get into definitional problems of how do you know whether it's creative or not. I mean, you could with an I suppose, you could set it, essentially give it an infinite lifetime because it's not biological, and have it randomly trying to do things, and then you could eventually say that's creative. But that's not what happens with humans. I'm saying with a human being, that you sit down with this idea of intent. I'm going to write something. I feel something. And I want to write it, and then the next morning Freddie Mercury's written Bohemian Rhapsody, or Mozart's written Turkish Rondo. It's not like they sat there for 1,000 or 1,000,000 years, as you would with a computer program, randomly trying to write other songs and then just by luck hit that. That would not be the same thing. So that the AI would have to demonstrate, feeling and intent and motivation that led to this composition. And I guarantee you that will never be possible. And that will be a point at which these things, well, it's not the only reason. I can think of lots of thought experiments along these lines that will demonstrate that what's happening with humans. I mean, it's as simple as saying, well, what, if I want to dumb it down, what's your favorite color? My favorite color is blue. What's yours? Let's say your favorite color is red or whatever. Why? Why is that your favorite color? Right? And so, can you change your favorite color? No, that's just your favorite color. It's not like you can decide to change that. That's something inside you. It's, as I'll talk about elsewhere, it's symphonic resonance. Is to do with your vibration outside of this. An AI is not going to have a favorite color. You could try to program it to emulate that and say it did, but it wouldn't. If you try to make it truly a human type intelligence, which means, again, I should not go into this because I realize it won't mean much to you, but eventually quantum computing will be able to emulate something called conceptual clustering, which is how our brain actually works, which means nothing to you, but I will go through it. We're a long way off of it, 100 years, maybe 30 to 50 years. Once we have that, it will truly emulate how our brains actually work, and I will go through this in detail. But it will still not have a favorite color, because your motivations and your feelings are part of your symphonic self. So this will be that this is why I want us to pursue artificial intelligence, as a way to show the boundaries of this box, which we cannot do any other way, but it will show the perceptual boundary of the box eventually. There was something else I wanted to add there, but my brain's cutting out. Yeah. Yeah, I realize that, I say I need to slow down and really I'm just trying, because I want to get everyone quickly to a point where we can have more interesting discussions. So I'm probably rushing through these things a little bit. If I were to sum this whole thing up, then, in other words, your biological computer is like this box. It limits you. It makes it, for most people, it makes them perceive that's all they are. Everything is inside this box. For those of us that have this symphonic perception out from outside the box, we see that that's what's happening. We also can see that, though, through these thought experiments, like I said, in AI and everything that I did, that this eventually will be realized. That won't give you symphonic perception, but it will make you realize that virtually everything about you is actually outside, and the only thing, ironically, that's inside is this information processing. Because all there is inside the box, what people are perceiving reality, is information, like a TV screen is information. Anyway, I've gone too quickly. I apologize, but we will break these things down and go through them more carefully. Okay, take care, everyone.